State University.
All right, good morning, everyone. All right, some of you I saw in the other room, so I'm just going to reintroduce myself for those of you who weren't there. So, as Jennifer said, I am Andrea Girl. I am the adjunct instructor of clarinet at Sam Houston State University, and unfortunately, I'm not Nancy Augerstein. Nancy was not able to be here this morning, so they asked me to fill in for her. I do apologize for my tardiness. Some of you know I was just in the other room presenting, and I had to run down here. In either case, it is a pleasure to be in this room as well to present the 2015 ATSSB All-State Etude selections for the B-flat bass and contract clarinets. I just want to mention that I grew up in a 3A high school, so it is a really big honor for me to have been able to come here today to present all of these etudes on behalf of an organization that really did so much for me as a young musician. I regret that I won't be performing anything live today. I was very worried about this transition between the rooms, and I'm sure you low clarinets know that if you look at a bass or a contra funny, like they will fall out of alignment. So I didn't even want to mess with it. So what we'll do this morning is I will have you listen to my recording of each etude, and then I'll take you through some just general tips and suggestions that I've accumulated from years of teaching, judging, and performing. So make sure that you received a handout at the back of the room, and if you need a copy of the music, I've also provided that as well so you can follow along. So without further ado, let's get started. This is, I think, what's going on? Oh, I forgot to plug this in. Should work now. All right, this is the first etude, which is number 8 of the Weissenborn study book. Studies in this book, and I want you to notice that it's marked Marcia Resoluto. That means that this piece should be performed in the style of a march, and it should be tongued markedly. The performance tempo suggestion is somewhere between quarter equals 112 and 126. And I suggest that you learn this very slow, probably somewhere around quarter note, about 50 or 60. There's some tricky rhythms in this piece, so you want to make sure that you're working slowly. The first has to do with all of the dotted 8 16th notes in the etude. And some of you might be thinking, you know, come on lady, it's a dotted 8 16th note. It's really not that hard. But if you were looking at the music, you'll notice that it's like all dotted 8 16th notes. And even as a professional, I get really hypnotized whenever I have to perform so many dotted 8 16ths. So what helps me is I've always practiced the dotted 8 subdivided into 3 16th notes, just so that I can make sure that I'm really learning how to space those out proportionately so that they're all even. There's also a really tricky measure in this piece. I believe this is measure 11. And it has to do with this 8th note grouping, going to a triplet grouping, and then back to your dotted 8 16th. This feeling from duple, triple to duple is difficult to feel, and it's especially difficult for most of my students who have had to perform this etude. So what I have my students do as they work on this is I have them work on the rhythm in their scales. And so all I've done, and this is on your handout, I have simply extracted the rhythm from that bar and have written it out so you can just plug it into your scales. They sound like this. This is my F major and my C major scales. That this etude should be in a march-like style and should be very markedly accented. I also want to mention that there are some sforzando markings that are indicated in the music as well. And I'm sure that you know how to execute a sforzando, but just as a reminder, make sure that the front of the note gets a nice articulated, accented beginning, and then give it a burst of air. But I want to warn you, as you give it the burst of air, make sure that you don't clamp your jaw into the reed. A lot of my students tend to do this. I think they just get carried away on the sforzandos. They really like them. And they clamp into them, and it always makes them sound kind of strangled. And you want those to sound nice and full. I also want to point out a really problematic marking that we have in measure 11. And I'm so sorry that I don't have a definitive answer about this. But I noticed that there is a slur that exceeds all the way up to the G, but it's a little ambiguous as to where it's supposed to end. There's nothing in the errata about this, and the question is out there lingering in the void, so I'm hoping it will be answered in a definitive way. But for the time being, and the sake of the presentation, I decided to articulate the F natural simply because this slur doesn't do what it's supposed to do and go to the end of the F. Okay, it should work either way, slurred or tongued, but I just wanted to make a decision. So here's what I have decided it will sound like. So just keep your eyes out for any errata changes that might be coming up in the next few weeks. Fingering suggestions. Guys, this is your public service announcement. There will be no sliding between the top E flat key and then the C key. And some of you are giggling because I know that you've been preached to about this before. Guys, behind the sheet we can't see you, but we can hear the pinky slide, okay? Make sure that you use the C fingering on the left hand instead, okay? So that's what it's fingered as, this key right over there. Yeah, I really can't emphasize that enough. I always have students who think they can get away with it just because I can't see them, but I can always hear it. I bet I could even hear it in the next room, so don't do it. Measure 9, I leave down some resonance fingerings on this B flat, just to make this D really easy to sail to. I want it to sound effortless. So just a reminder, I like to add those bottom right hand fingers. Okay, I regret that my recording I could not get my recorder to pick up dynamic fluctuations on the bass clarinet. I don't know why. I paid enough for my recorder that it should do this. But I wanted to make sure to point out some dynamic things in here because I don't know if you were able to hear them in the recording. First of all, you should start poco forte. Poco means a little. So don't start like really rambunctiously forte because you want to have some places to go to later on. So I like to really sustain that poco forte dynamic level throughout the first line and make it nice and strong. And then here with the sforzandos, I like to insert just some decrescendos in there so that the sforzandos are very clear and I'm not having to work too hard. Then I insert a large crescendo between measure 7 and measure 8, and I really end this first section with some gusto. Please notice the caesura here. Caesura means stop. Okay, so make a full stop, take a breath, wait a little bit, and then start the contrasting section. Remember that there should be no repeats performed in the music, so don't follow the repeats. In terms of breath marks, you can breathe every 4 bars in the piece, or you can breathe every 8 if you're going at the top of the tempo suggestion. It really doesn't matter which way you do it. I like to do it every 4 bars because, I don't know, low clarinets make me nervous and I want to make sure that I've got a lot of air. So, it doesn't matter if you breathe every 4 or every 8, but regardless, make sure that you take this breath in measure 12. It's not optional. This line coming up is the hardest line in the etude, and you're going to need a lot of air in order to get it to respond well. All of the dynamic markings that I made right here, I just copy and paste at the end because it's basically the same idea. You might have noticed that I have inserted a retard in measure 16. The reason why you do this is because this is the climax of the piece, and I really want to over-dramatize this moment. So as I mentioned, measures 14 through 16 is going to prove to be the most problematic passage for you in this etude. The reason why it's so difficult is you have this articulated approach to all of your clarion register fingerings. And by clarion, I mean the middle register right over the break. I'm sure that I'm preaching to the choir here because you guys all know as low clarinetists, this F and G feel very resistant. They do not feel good at all, especially on the student model basses that I know you guys are playing on. I had the privilege of playing on a really nice bass clarinet that is not mine, but it's so much easier if you have a really, really nice professional model bass or contra, but most of us don't. I decided to buy a car instead. So just know that ahead of time, these are going to be very difficult to get out. So as you're working on it, and directors, as you're working on this with your students, there are 2 problems that you can anticipate. The first is that you might start squeaking on this E flat, the F, and the G. The second problem is that you might get undertones instead, meaning that they kind of sound grunty and you don't quite get up to pitch. Regardless of what problem you're having, the easy solution is always air, okay? And if you were in the clarinet room just a second ago, you know I just preached a lot about air, but I feel like on the low clarinets, it is so essential in doing anything. Make sure that it's constantly fast, constantly pressurized, and that you're supporting with your abdominal muscles. If you're not, this passage is not going to work. If the student is squeaking, make sure that you're not biting too much on the reed as you ascend to these higher notes. If you're getting the undertone, make sure that your lips are firm. Believe it or not, you should have firm lips when you play a low clarinet. A lot of students think that you can have loosey-goosey lips. It is not true. They must be firm and the jaw must be open. Also check the arch in the back of your tongue. The back of your tongue should not look like this. It should not be like a flat sheet of paper. It should be slightly arched, so make sure that that's there. What I do with my students is I have them practice this line as a long tone. And all I've done is I've simply substituted all of those dotted 8/16 followed by the quarters with just one duration at a time. So I wrote these out in quarter notes, and I'm about to play it for you. You'll hear it performed in half notes and in quarters. As you're doing this long tone, you want to focus on your airspeed, your firm and unmoving bottom lip, your open and relaxed jaw position, and just no movement in the face whatsoever as you're changing notes. Don't clamp into the reed as you're changing. So here's what it sounds like. It's really hard in half notes. I was struggling. trying it again, but articulating your halves and quarters so that you can practice focusing on those concepts with the tongue added in, which is always problematic. Once you feel like you can do that, then it's time to go for our black belts in bass and contra clarinet. And what you want to do is substitute the quarter notes in here for eighth notes, or a dotted 8/16, or triplet groupings. The faster that your tongue has to move, the more hard it is to keep all of these things in place. Let's move on to the second etude, which is number 2 of the Weizenborn